Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to another Discord discussions. This week's an interesting topic and pretty poignant in all the things that are going on around us is class. And class has a great number of definitions of which we're going to have, I'm sure, a varied range of opinions on. I'm going to start it off with I had asked my wife to put forth a woman's point of view on class. And I'm going to read her opinion, and that's where we'll start, and then we'll go into each person's opinion after that. So, class, in my wife's estimation, is choosing to not unnecessarily offend, to hold your tongue, refrain from swearing, it's politeness and manners, wearing the appropriate clothing and jewelry, but not overly revealing or gaudy, not engaging in arguments, only sensible dialogue, respecting and treating a lady as a lady and a man as a man. Not that roles must be traditional, but they should begin and evolve from there in each relationship. What I think is interesting about it, because when you look at our younger populace today, they don't have any issue being massively inappropriate in how they dress, how much they expose of themselves. Um, there's OnlyFans. Like there's a how can an individual have an OnlyFans and class at the same time? So there's definitely a lack of furtherance of a social norm that for how long was always upheld and then suddenly not. So I would like each person's opinion on my wife's input, and then we'll go into individual. So I'm going to start with Chris, and then Phil, and then Fly. ML, Phil, and Fly. Go ahead, Phil. ML. Sorry.
Yeah, class is one of those ones where I wrote down a bunch of like connotations for it, where just to kind of give me a feel. So like synonyms and stuff like that. Like class, I see related to dignity, self-control, stoicism. Restraint is a big one. Sandy talked a lot about restraint, and that was the first. That was the first word I wrote down. Was that to me, class is about restraint. So like an example would be um, old money and new money. So there's this concept of, people who are used to engaging with wealth and have grown up around it versus people who have grown up poor and suddenly come into wealth and come into a bunch of money. And what we see, like that, the stereotype of that concept is that like the new money are the people who buy ostentatious elaborate symbols of to show off their wealth. So they buy Hummers, they buy gold-plated Humvees, they buy gold-plated everything. They drink booze like Cristal that doesn't even really taste that good, and blah blah blah. And then you've got old money, which is more about restraint and about not showing off your wealth. And to me, I think that's something that we could use a little more of because now it's completely taken for granted. It's completely taken for granted that like if you're rich, of course you're going to show it off. And that's a relatively new idea. I have to say for a long time it wasn't really, you know, it really wasn't considered such a great thing to like for example be rich and drive your car through like poor areas just showing off how rich you are, and then the poor people are supposed to clap and chat and cheer for you because you've like made it out of the ghetto or something. Like it's all just so incredibly cringy to me. And I mean, you see it in our music too. It used to be women would write love songs, and some still do. Although most now, like the best you're going to get is Taylor Swift writing, you know, revenge stuff about her exes. But the worst you're going to get is WAP, and I mean, it would be very like if you were to, if you were to go up to like Ella Fitzgerald, you know, from the 40s who fought so hard to just be allowed to sing in clubs and to like go through the front door rather than the back door to overcome all these color barriers. Um, if you had gone up to Ella Fitzgerald and showed her WAP and said, "This is what, like, this is what you fought so hard for. This is what the women are, the female musicians and artists are doing with that freedom that you won them." She would just like I think she'd probably be really classy about it. She would probably sigh gently and just say something like, "Well, that's disappointing." But contained within those gentle words, I think would be a world of disappointment, and if you don't see it, then well, lucky you, because that's how Ella Fitzgerald would tell you that you've failed in her eyes. Um, yeah, but there's not that anymore. All there is, WAP comes out, and Cardi B and Megan the Stallion get Artist of the Year and like female performer of the century and whatever else. It's totally lauded and celebrated, and I don't think that's good. I think a complete abandonment in the interest of class and dignity is a pretty good way to ensure that your society is going to go to crap like Rome did really fast. If you have no interest in restraint or taste, then like WAP is just the beginning. It's going to get way worse. So I'll
Phil,
end it there.
what do you think, Phil?
That's a very good summary. I think, like when you talk about, um, you've got both sides. You've got the actual class side of it, i.e., the positive, and then you got the negative side of it, i.e., the exact opposite. I think, I'm sitting here thinking about at least what I consider class and what I consider to be classy, is something that adheres to at least the accepted conventions of our society, or the guidelines that we have put forward to say this is proper. I think it's also like, if you were to kind of bracket it into etiquette and behavior, it's definitely an interesting topic that you kind of need to, and I think we'll flesh out a little bit. So I'm interested to hear others' opinions.
Fly?
Yeah. I think it's like the mindset of a person or people. Because I look, when we was talking about that, I looked up where the term come from, the etymology of that, and they said it was widely used in the early 19th century, replacing such terms as rank and order as descriptions of major ranks or groupings in society. So what's classy to some people may not be classy to other people. I mean, I think people have their own spin of what they think what is class and what is not classy. A lot of times when people think they're doing things by the right way, or by what the people think that they think the definition, or how you're supposed to act being a classy person, may not be classy to other people. I think people who are wealthy people, why should they be given the term as being classy? Because they have money. So I just think it's a different viewpoints of different people and what they think of what class is. That's what I spin on it.
My wife was also very much on that context, that she told her kids growing up, because they were not well to do, that class is not money. Poor people can be classy. It's your behavior. It's how you choose to present yourself to the world. Just because you don't have money doesn't mean you don't have class. Just because you don't have a Rolex doesn't mean you don't have class. A lot of people tend to signify class with material things or bespoke items. As
I'm just thinking of I'm just kind of testing, because just the idea, like, can you be classy? Like, does being rich automatically make you classy, or like displaying? I'm just thinking like displaying ostentatiously wealth, because Mansa Musa is like pretty much one of the richest
yes, true,
people of all time, right?
black
And
man, yes.
he he was very show-offy. He was very ostentatious with his wealth. Everyone knew how freaking wealthy that was. The legends go on to this day. But he also gave away enormous amounts of his wealth. He was really generous with it. So, like, yeah, everyone knew that Mansa Musa, like, he was the man. He had more gold than there was in Fort Knox, but he also gave so much of it away that, yeah, I don't know. I'd have to think about it more, because he's one where I'm like, he's a rich guy who showed off his wealth, and I don't really think of that as being classy. But at the same time, he also gave away an enormous amount of his wealth, and I
So
do think of that as being classy. So
okay,
know.
so
That-
I'm going to throw something in on that because I want to say something that ML will be just salivating to expound upon. Donald Trump lacks any class, and he's rich. So the idea of wealth brings class. Class is absolutely
He lacks a
incorrect.
lot of class. Even I had to correct myself. Remember when I was talking with you,
Yeah.
and I had to admit that, at the end of the day, Donald Trump can, like, go to a fancy dinner, or he can go to a fight and comport himself amongst other classy people in a way where he's not embarrassing
Right.
himself. He's done it for most of his life, so he actually can be a bit classy. But like, the one I wrote in my notes was compare Donald Trump to Ronald Reagan,
Right.
and
So
I think that, like, there's just so much difference.
statesman, like, okay, so I want to ask this
Precisely,
question.
yes.
So okay, I want to
Well,
go.
Ronald Reagan was an actor too, so
Yeah, I know. You can't
Ronald
forget
Reagan
that.
was the great communicator. He was so many things. I mean,
He was a great
classy, I
president.
think. Well, and I don't think even his haters would say that he wasn't classy.
Yeah. You know who else?
Like, he was incredibly well spoken.
Look at RFK. You know, there have been on both sides of the aisle very classy presidents throughout history. You know, on Democrat and Republican sides. It wasn't. I don't think there's an exclusivity to one
Well,
side. or
let's
the other.
not, like, Obama. A huge part of Obama's appeal, at least to the people who voted for him and liked him, I think, was that he, like, after Bush
Oh, yeah.
was seen as a bit of a knucklehead and a bit of an embarrassment for America, and there was a real urge amongst a lot of Americans, much as there is in Canada now after the embarrassment that is Justin Trudeau. There's a natural urge to want to elect somebody in response, like, to this
The opposite.
doofus. Yeah, exactly, and be like, okay, here's our classy guy. You know what I mean? And Obama was. It certainly has, I think, all the mannerisms.
Oh, he's a very
and,
well spoken.
and affectation. He's incredibly classy. Yes.
Yeah, he was very like that was one of the things. Like when I voted for Obama the first time and the second time, it had nothing to do necessarily with all of his politics. It had everything to do with, like, I was tired of "we gonna get you." It was the Bubba syndrome.
He had a
Like, I
message
wanted
of
somebody
hope
to-
and
yeah.
change,
Like,
and it was a good message.
However,
It didn't turn into reality, but
right,
it was a
but
really
it was a good idea.
message.
Right. So at the end of the day, when you examine different people in the media, right, Sean Connery was just the epitome of class, right?
Well,
That
see,
Yeah,
and
dude
yet
was
my
well-spoken.
my mom would not agree with that. Just
Really?
as an interesting case study
Okay.
of, like, how people's have differing opinions of class. My mom would not, like, I'm sure if you pressed her on, like, the attributes of class, she would admit that he has many classy attributes. But the fact that, like, my mom wouldn't be able to get over the fact that he said it was okay to hit a woman when she was being hysterical. I think that would, like, to my mom's definition of class, that's not a class.
Does a
that's not
single
acceptable
behavior does a single behavior wipe
I think
out?
there can be deal breakers. Yes.
Well, so
It's a good question, and I think so, and it would be worth exploring. Like, can there be single behaviors that just completely invalidate you from being classy, even if you have a bunch of other classy features? And I would say yes, because this prevents the elegant psychopath. You know what I mean? Or the dictator who has the table manners of a rabbit, who's incredibly fastidious and clean and inoffensive, and yet, once it's not in polite circumstances, he's, tearing off heads.
well,
So, yeah.
okay, and there's a lot, and I'm going to ask Chris something because I was
That would be my argument. I'm not sure on that,
Oh,
but my
sure.
feeling is, yeah.
Well, here's an interesting thought: is I know there's a lot of literary villains that are exceptionally classy. that are like
Ooh, fair point.
really elegant,
Okay. Yeah,
really bespoke.
yeah. Hannibal Lecter. Let's just go right to Hannibal
That-
Lecter.
that's
sure.
who I was
Okay.
thinking originally. It was like Hannibal. Like
Is
he's
Hannibal
gonna
Lecter
eat you.
classy?
He's gonna eat you.
Well, he does the worst things. Like he does
Yes.
things that clearly should. That's a really good counterpoint because I'm starting to rethink that because I can't
What do
say
you
that he's
think?
not
What do you
classy.
think?
Of course he's
What do you think,
classy.
Sly?
Wow, man, between again, it's the personal viewpoint what class is. I mean, even when you talk about Obama,
It's like by feeling, right?
yes, to me, that's I do agree with that. Obama was to me was he had to be classy, man. He had too much going against him. He had to be classy.
He
And I'm not
played
even
the game by the rules. The
yeah,
rules
I'm
weren't
like
fair,
I didn't really
but
like
he played
Obama.
it well.
I'll be honest with you. I didn't really like Obama. I'm not really into the politics of things, but Obama had to be classy, man. When he was at the I think there was a some speak thing he was doing, and the guy said, "You lied." The first time I ever heard that heard a president being disrespected by his peers. I mean, Obama could have went off.
Well, do you
But
think?
he had to keep his cool. He had to.
Do you think
If that been me, I would say, "Fuck you, bitch, you lie."
Do you think if there was a recording found of Obama saying "grab him by the pussy," that they would have forgiven a black man for saying that?
Hell no.
I don't think so.
He wore
I
a
don't
tan.
think so.
He wore a tan suit one time. A tan suit, very nice suit. I love suits. A tan suit, and he was ostracized by that. He's not presidential. Why is he wearing a tan suit? Come on.
Well, the level and the level of hysteria
They
and
disrespected his wife.
craziness.
They said
Oh,
his
yeah.
wife is a man named Michael. I mean,
Oh,
come
yeah.
on. Come
Yeah,
on.
so-
they threw so many things at Obama that were really dirty, and that some of them were definitely racist. And,
So I'm
and,
asking
not
you
just
guys-
not just the right, also Obama's own side when he was in the primaries, he faced it from the Democrats too, and it was
Yeah,
just
he did.
like,
It's true.
and he rised above it. He didn't engage it at that level at all, and that's what let him win.
Yep.
Okay,
Let me ask you a question, brothers.
He was
Is
classy.
America classy?
oh, at the moment.
Does
No.
America has class?
Oh, okay. So that's a very difficult question to answer.
Current
implicitly.
America, yeah.
So because
Current America.
current America with our current administration and the current policies, no, there's no.
Well,
class
and also
decorum.
take it to the culture. Like, where's
Right.
the class in American culture?
That which
Where
is
it?
what brought on this whole topic was that I grew up in the
Like
age
there wasn't class in
men
the
were
previous
men.
administration either. Like there
no,
hasn't been
I
class
agree.
for a while.
That's what I'm saying. Like you have, it's not a. I don't say it's not a new thing, but I'd say it probably started.
It's a degenerate thing. It started to like degenerate. I think probably sometime. I don't know.
Early
like
90s,
everything else,
late 90s.
I think it was
Coming
early.
on
I think postmodernism has something to do with it because postmodernism hates tradition.
Yeah.
And class.
You're starting to drill into post World War One, World War Two. The
yeah, that's probably a
you
better
know,
assessment. 'cause
Yeah,
I
yeah,
thought
that's
that-
where you're starting to
generation
see the spiral. But I think like you're
we
asking
pointed
the
that out
question.
before.
Yeah, you're asking the question whether or not America is classy or not. And I think to some degree it is still classy. Does that, like on the scale, is it more toward the not classy and very belligerent and stupid? Yes. And so that's where the perception is. But there's still some class in America. The
Oh,
same
yeah.
way you can
It's
say
like a
Hannibal
relative
Lecter.
question. It's like
It's like
comparing it to 50 years ago.
Yeah, it's like a weight scale. You know, you got a balance of what's classy, and then you got a balance of what's absolutely abhorrent. And
But who gets to decide
Hannibal
that?
Lecter, it's you, me, like whoever
Well, the
is
society
perceiving
at
it.
large, right?
Like Hannibal
Obama
Lecter,
got voted because he was classy, so I
Yes.
mean, it has effects.
yes, and so like you talk about Hannibal Lecter as a reference, he had so much class that it outweighed what bad he was doing, even though it was
everybody loved
behind
the
closed
character.
doors. Correct, because he was that classy. It's like this dude could get himself out of anything, almost anything, and
Well,
it took
even, like, little things
how
like-
long?
Where he's what was it? Him when he was free before he was captured the first time and put in jail, and he was a patron of the Philadelphia Philharmonic, and of course classical music and all that. And they had a new French horn player, and he wasn't very good, and he was kind of spoiling the orchestra to the fine ears of Hannibal Lecter. So Hannibal Lecter killed him and served him to a bunch of the other patrons who had also found his playing distasteful. They found his flesh quite tasteful because they didn't know they were eating him. And again, it's like so horrifying, but because it's intertwined so artfully and subtly and sophisticatedly with class, that it makes us almost forgive the bastard. You know what I mean?
In a book reference or in a visual reference, I can see Hannibal Lecter being classy, right? But if you were to witness that in person, whether you were eating of or you were just near him and you heard the story, that's not classy at all. Not even classy at
You
all.
wouldn't find it classy if you saw the security camera footage.
It's
of
like a
him actually
dichotomy.
killing and butchering the dude.
Yeah, it would
ugly.
because it's
It's
behind
like a
closed
dichotomy,
doors.
man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
behind closed doors. So
Well,
his class
That in
was.
itself is a classy thing, keeping things
Correct.
behind closed doors. Yeah.
What were you gonna say there, Fly?
I said it's like a dichotomy. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and
Yep.
behind closed doors. But hey, this is where integrity smashes up with being classy. I mean, even
Or is
behind
there
closed doors,
darkness to
even
a classy?
behind closed doors, when no one else is watching you, you still should be classy.
Well, so it's interesting.
Well, there's an interesting. Yeah. Should classy be an act, or should classy be
That-
like an
I'll-
affectation, or is it just something you are?
Okay, so
It's something that you are. It's
hold
something
on,
that
hold
you
on,
are.
hold
It's
on.
in your
No,
DNA.
that's a good question, Mean. You don't have to stop him because
I know, but I want to inject that. So I said, hold on for a moment because I want to say something. So I think an individual can aspire to class from classless. You take somebody who might have been poor, grew up relatively uneducated in their youth, but then through whether it be peer influence, mentorship, consuming of books, literature, education, whether it be higher or otherwise, that an individual develops class. Does their previous transgressions preclude them from being included as those with class? Because obviously, we have, all of us who watch Hannibal Lecter, overlook the terrible deeds and constitute him as classy because of his behavior. So I think the question of is class a conscious decision, or is it something that someone may be born with, born into? Like, I think I believe it to be a learned behavior.
Well, for another side reference, I think it is a learned behavior. It's not something that you're born with. And I also think that when you talk about Hannibal Lecter and why people thought what he was doing, as gruesome as it was very cool and classy, is the sense that this guy does what I do. Like, they can kind of relate to it, but it's so far gone down the path of not, like, just absolutely despicable that they can relate to that to some degree. At least I'm not that far, so it makes them feel good about it. So there's that
it's
catch
almost
too.
like a relief. It's like, this guy's
Yeah.
so horrible. Oh, but at least he's tidy.
And it makes
At
me
least
look
he only
good.
kills the bad people, like
Yeah.
Dexter. It's
I was
like,
going to say
oh,
Dexter.
there we
That's
go.
that's a really good analogy. Is Dexter.
He wasn't
yeah,
very classy in the sense that, like, he wasn't elegant in his, like, styling or his music taste or correct me if I'm wrong if I remember correctly, but
He was a friend.
he was he was classy in the
And
way
yeah,
that
he was
he
pretty
executed
clueless.
he executed his I guess the
victim.
passenger, right? So, like, when he got into that zone, that was a classy moment, right? But it was still very, very
Well,
wrong.
was it classy or was it just sophisticated? Because the passenger
Was
and
sophisticated.
Dexter is
it's
incredibly
sophistication and class
sophisticated,
similar.
but they're definitely related. I think that where you find one, you're highly likely to find the other, but I don't know if they're, like, absolutely correlated. I wonder. Okay, so there's a question because I don't know the answer. Can you be classy without being sophisticated?
Yes, 100%. Think about
My gut is yes,
you think about some
because
of
I
the
just
farmers.
think of like the noble savage.
My
Basically.
my grandfather, okay, was not an educated man in the traditional sense of today's modern standard, but the man could take absolutely any diesel apart, put it back together, make it operate properly. You know,
Well,
he
that's not
farmed,
classy. No,
but he
classy is the
had
part where he
class.
could sit. He could sit at the table with learned men, and he wouldn't
Oh,
embarrass himself.
oh
Right?
no, not at all.
Like
And
he
when he
knows
spoke,
how to
people would
comport
listen.
himself. Yeah, exactly. And he knows when not to speak.
Right. So there's a
And
we-
none of those things require like an education. Those are all really that's all like EQ sort of stuff.
so
It seems that good.
Yeah, I agree. Emotional intelligence. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah,
so
stuff I don't generally have. I've had to work on that a lot.
so there's an interesting thing I was considering a moment ago was the jester in the king's court, right? The jester was always what one of the poorest guys in the room, I guess, in the king's court, but he could make
Had
fun.
a lot of respect for the king.
He made fun of the king. He made fun of everyone, and he had to do it with class or they'd kill him. So
I don't know if a jester has class. A jester is kind of like
right, but you can make fun of somebody.
I would say a good jester has sophistication for sure, but you're almost like violating the rules of class intentionally. Like, and you're the one who gets.
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
the jester's
yeah.
the one who gets to make fun of the king. Lese majesté is not a very classy thing. It also tends to be a fatal thing, but the jester's the one who gets to do it.
But
Right.
it seems that to have like if you were to be a jester, you would have to have some sort of tasteful behavior that would humor people with class, and so you'd have to have a sense of decorum and dignity.
Fair. You couldn't be
Right.
crude. You couldn't be
Right.
the opposite.
Yeah,
And so that-
exactly.
that
Exactly. It's like
lines you-
comedians. The
Yeah,
truth
it
is
lines
in
you
the
under
joke.
it lines you under being classy, and you have to be sophisticated enough to understand how and what levels of refinement need to be applied to certain topics.
Well, as soon as I asked myself in response to your question, well, could the jester survive while not being classy? No, absolutely not, because there's time between jokes, and he's got to keep his fucking mouth shut, and he's got to know like what his role is, and he needs to, yeah, and all those things require you to not be the opposite of classy, which is like crass.
So
I
think
think
about
the crass jester would get a few laughs and then get himself killed.
well, think about comedy today, right? Think of the stand-up comics that didn't swear. Jeff Foxworthy,
Seinfeld, yeah, Foxworthy.
Seinfeld, Andy
Bill
Andrews,
Cosby.
Bill Cosby was. Oh my God, Bill was great. As much as
Yeah.
say what you will about him. And
His legacy,
exclusionary.
it doesn't have anything to do with his creepy sex stuff. His
Right.
legacy is like one of the most influential comics
Compare
of all
him
time.
to Richard
Holds.
Pryor and Red Fox.
Oh, he's totally in Pryor's realm, absolutely. In terms
You
of
can't
influence, yeah.
skill and talent, but they went about the same thing with a massive disparity in class. So
Something
you look at the women comedians today, right? Most men don't like women
Mhm.
comedians because they lack class and decorum.
Most women don't like women comedians either.
No.
Like their comedy specials don't do shit.
Nope. But
True.
look, Jim Brewer doesn't swear. Okay, Jim Brewer is one of the absolute funniest people
Yeah,
in the
Jim
world.
Gaffigan. I don't think Gaffigan swears either.
Stephen Wright. There's been a lot of comedians over time that didn't.
Seinfeld talked about it.
Yeah, like
he talked about
he
it.
wore a suit.
To him, it wasn't. Seinfeld, when asked about not swearing, said that he didn't like that. He thought it was too easy. He thought it was like a bit of a cheat code. He didn't like that he swore in a couple of his jokes in his very early days when he first started out as an unknown comic. But he told this one joke that had where it really punctuated the punchline with the word fuck. And then one night he tried it without the fuck, and the joke didn't land. It didn't work, and he really didn't like that. He thought that the joke worked without the fuck, and he realized that it didn't, and he didn't like that, and so he just wanted to write jokes that didn't depend on that. And if you compare him to someone who's that, it's the Irish guy. Is it Billy Connolly?
Yeah, Bill Connolly's
Like,
hilarious.
Bill Connolly
Swears every other word.
I cannot make it through. I haven't made it through one of his bits. I've tried watching him at least a half dozen times. My sister saw him live and said, and she's a huge Bill Connolly fan, so she likes all the swearing. Even she said that live she was disappointed because it went from every third word being fuck to every second word being fuck. And the increase from 33% to 50% was just too much. And I'm just like, yeah, I can't handle the 33%. Like, I need more cleverness and substance and sophistication. I need more meat to the joke. That's all sizzle and no steak. That's all smoke, no fire. Like, it's just I don't like it. And but at the same time, I'm not some prude as to think that you shouldn't use, because my favorite comics all swear.
Well,
so,
Interesting.
but
that
I think it's about
Dave
how
Chappelle,
you use it.
like Dave Chappelle, doesn't really swear that often. I mean, if you
He
listen to
did
one
a
of his,
lot. His best, like Killing Him Softly, which is his
Yeah.
best work, he swears up a storm.
yeah, I was more talking about his more recent stuff where
Yeah, his shitty stuff. His recent stuff's crap. Like his recent stuff compared to Killing Him Softly is garbage. Compared to Chappelle's show, garbage. His recent stuff, even his fans have started to notice. Like, it's not like he's not even really telling jokes anymore. He's just like talking about how crazy
the
a
world
lot
is.
of his collisions with the craziness of the world are, and they are naturally funny stories, so they get laughs. But I challenge anyone who thinks that he's still
Okay,
producing
so
at the level. Go watch Killing Him Softly.
I've seen it.
Ooh.
So what about George Carlin?
Yeah, the man who literally used swearing, like
as
broke down the etymology of
Yeah.
swear words.
there's like 10
as
words you
a
can't
comedic bit.
say, right?
The 7 words. Yeah.
There's 7 words you can't say, and what was interesting is he actually he was a very sophisticated man. So he was
Well,
a
he was
very
a clean
sophisticated.
comic before then. He used to do like his early comedy. He was in a suit and a tie, and he didn't swear. It was only in the late '60s, early '70s that he started to get. He grew his hair long. He stopped wearing suits, and he got a bit counterculture.
So there's a good question because you asked counterculture. So do we attribute the lack of decorum in our current society as a counterculture, or is it no longer counter and it's just the current culture?
It is the cult. Okay, well, go back to WAP. To me, WAP. Sorry to keep like for anyone who's a fan of the song, but to me, that song was a real moment in history. Like it's in cultural history. The fact that that song was not only tolerated but celebrated. If you tried to play a song like that even
Elvis
30
era.
years ago, you could go way later than that. Even in the 80s, that wouldn't have been allowed on radio. No way.
Oh, hold on.
Even in the 90s, I think you would have had problems getting that on the radio. Laid by what's his name, it never got radio play because it references a woman liking to come when she's on top.
Do you remember Two
But
Live
that
Crew?
was enough. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
So
yeah,
Two
there
Live
we go.
Crew came out in the late 90s, early 90s, right? And that album was one of the causes for the explicit lyrics volume or stickers to be put on cassettes and CDs.
Yeah, and it's nothing compared to WAP.
Yeah.
WAP, when
that-
you read the lyrics to
Oh.
WAP, you're just like, no. Like, this is like, again, it's one of those things where it's so extreme that if someone, like, say, like Daily Wire or Breitbart or whatever, some right-wing publication wanted to make a parody of WAP,
they get in trouble.
how? Well, no. How? How do you make a parody? Is a more extreme version of the thing that highlights through the hyperbole, that highlights the absurdities contained within. How do you make a more extreme version of WAP? It
I
would
don't know.
just be an actual porn video. Like,
Basically.
it would just be the sounds of people fucking, and it would just be nonstop obscenity. Like, that's the only way that you could make a more extreme version of WAP. So it's basically, so many things in society are at this point now where they are indistinguishable from parody from like 10 years ago. Like the things that we would, or they're indistinguishable from they cannot be made parody of, because they're already at the limit of extremes that our imagination can even come up with.
So, Phil, how does class return in a society that is celebrating the lack of it? If you consider OnlyFans, if you consider WAP as the current belief system, humanism as the current religion, and sexuality is 100% its main
Humanism
selling
isn't the
point.
religion; it's leftism.
Well,
Leftism is not humanism.
well, here's the thing.
Sorry, as a humanist, I have to speak up for the humanists.
Okay.
They
So-
ain't with us. They ain't with us.
Fair enough.
Well, humanists do not accept postmodernism, as far as I'm aware.
So, if we have a culture that is celebrating what 99% of the world prior to this time in history would have been looked upon aghastly and said, "Oh my God."
The rest of the world is still doing that outside the West. The rest of the world is looking with aghast right now at what we're doing, just to add.
What do
It's
you
true.
think, Phil, Fly? I want you guys to talk because me and ML have been killing this conversation for a little bit.
I think you're beginning to have the conversation about. I think your wife mentioned it, which was talking about modesty and simplicity, which is like simple elegance is a very easy way of saying it, but I think there's something expressed well and something that I've personally had to struggle with, which is like if you want to talk about something that you're doing or something that you're accomplishing without having to showcase your extensive knowledge on a topic to show yourself sophisticated, while just instead just being humble, quiet, sit in the corner, talk about a topic, and that's it. That's lost, major. And then you want to talk about being genuine. I don't think Nicki Minaj or whatever those two artists are being genuine at all. They're there to get paid. That's what they're there for. And so it's all about money. And so then you've got to ask the question of, okay, well,
Class
we're
has
going
a
in this
price.
direction. Right. Class has a price. And you go from this direction. Okay, then what happens if you go the opposite direction? Well, it ends up leading you back to some sense of, like, I guess, morals. It doesn't really have to be a religious moral. It just needs to be a set of, like, a moral code, right?
One of them, just to add to that, one of them, I can't remember, Cardi B or Megan. There's video of, I think it's Cardi. There's video of her taken by her man, just doing, like, just cleaning and doing household chores. And her just like grousing about it a bit, but just doing it. And because like one of the lines in WAP is something about I don't cook, I don't clean. So then her man just took phone video of her cooking and cleaning at home, and she knows that he's doing it. She knows he's gonna post it, but she's like, whatever, it is what it is. And so just to agree with you, yeah, I think it is a bit of an act, because like at least one of them in her personal life is acting fairly traditionally and domestically with her very alpha man. So
there's that problem of are we just like creating this like entertainment sphere, pushing it forward publicly, like this is what we're doing, when in reality that's not what we're doing, but the general public population are saying, oh, this is what we need to be aiming for, kind of like if you were to talk about like gang rap, right? It's like it's all about guns, hoes, and drugs. That's all it's about. And is that what they're doing? A little bit, but not most of them. No, because they know where that gets them, because they've been either in a gang and they know if they talk about it, they're done. They can't do that.
yeah,
That's not
the
reality.
ones who make it are the ones who are like, they saw the gangs, maybe they were on the periphery of it, but they didn't get so involved with it that they were like hardcore in it. Those are guys like Tookie Williams. Well, Tookie was too busy being a gangster to go about having a rap career. He left it to the rappers who saw him to reference him afterwards. So yeah, I mean, and I mean, even then, like gangster rap at least has some kind of like, it's understandable. It's understandable why it's there, where it came from. Its effect is definitely corrosive. It's not good, but it's, I don't know. At least to me, I can see the genesis of the thing. Whereas where you get to like like the sexualization of children and the horrification of women is the one that's happened in my lifetime. Like I was stocking shelves in London Drugs when the first iteration of the Bratz dolls came out, and to this day, I still remember the shot. I thought it was a gag gift. I thought it was a joke gift for adults. Kept checking the label because I'm like, this doesn't go in the kids section. There's no way. This goes in the center section. This is like a gag gift for adults. Put it next to like, the candlesticks. But no, it was for kids. I was like, oh, this is unironic. This is for real. Holy shit! And it's been like I don't know. I've noticed more and more of that and become more and more prudish as I've aged because of just like I didn't even know until it was. I didn't know I was that way until I was challenged with something that was just so overt that I couldn't it was just undeniable. I was looking at the Bratz dolls and I'm like, this is sexualizing children. Like, how is this not? And then you get to WAP, and it's like you're just saying that the only thing that you have to give to a man, what do you bring to the table? I don't cook, I don't clean, but I bring this WAP. And you're singing that as though it's this empowering anthem. And I'm like, this is, I swear to God, it's like something that was come up by sophisticated Chinese scientists, trying to socially engineer the corrosive, toxic inner rot and downfall of the American empire. And that would be the kind of thing they would do because they're so bloody sophisticated when it comes to their conception of warfare, that I almost start to get a bit paranoid.
Fly.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I just think as the baby boomers die out, this country is going to get more and more. I mean, are you talking about that song WAP?
Yeah.
Yeah, Wet Ass Pussy.
Yeah, Wet Ass Pussy. And that song was a #1 song?
It was.
Yeah, it won. When you look at its Wikipedia article, the number of awards that it Song of the Year, Artists of the Year for Megan and Cardi, and it was lauded as this. It's hilarious to read the academics trying to use their fancy bullshit language
and that's
to justify it.
That song is not classy at all. It's a classless song in a classless
100%.
society that we live in today.
To me, it's like a litmus test for classy. If you listen to that song and watch that video, and your response is "Yes, Queen," you're not classy. I'm just gonna use that as like an accurate litmus test.
This song is brought out to the young people, young girls. I mean, it's very unclassy. I mean,
and
that's the way of the world today. It's the way of the world today, man.
Well, I think you mentioned as the baby boomers, dissipate, and you've got the next generation is less than the prior in whatever sense, right? I think the same could be said about the previous generations, right? To go all the way back, we're at this general progression, and though it's going faster now than it has ever, right? As all things like the bell curve will go, more vertical the further you go to the left or to the right. It's just one of those things, and it's going to keep getting worse and worse at a much faster rate.
It's not like some out of control spiral, though. I mean, the
it's
generation that defeated the Nazis were some of the I think probably some of the strongest human beings that have existed for a long time. Like those dudes were tough.
Speaking of Cardi B,
it's because tough times raised them. So when we encounter tough times again, we will raise tough men again. It's inevitable.
Well, we're in the tough times now. So here's an interesting thing.
It's starting, yeah.
I was thinking about something that you said, and Tom MacDonald, the rapper from Canada that lives in the U.S. now, one of his songs, right? He goes fake woke and says, "I think it's crazy that I'm the one that's labeled controversial, and Cardi B is the role model for 12-year-old girls. There's a rapper pushing Xanax at the top of the billboard. If I mention race in a song, I'm scared I'll get killed for it. It's backwards. It's getting exponentially dumb." And he's not wrong.
And also Cardi B is the one. Yeah, it's not Megan. Cardi B is the one who was she was a prostitute before she made it big, and she used to rob. She used to rob the men.
Yeah,
and she's bragged about it openly in a bunch of interviews, and it's like, so that like I get it. The male equivalent is like Jay-Z and 99 Problems, and or Snoop being a drug dealer before. I get it. Like, it's not great, but like, to me, drug dealing to me is kind of similar to prostitution, where it's not it's almost a victimless crime. But when you're drugging when you're drugging your clients, knocking them unconscious, and then robbing them blind, yeah, that's, I don't know, that kind of like goes to the next level of criminality for me.
But I think it's interesting that, we have.
And she's this big role model for the girls. Like, she
Well,
is
so
openly
Crazy.
held up as that. And
Let's
it's
go
just
back
like,
to
that's ridiculous.
Let's go back for a minute to the topic at hand, 'cause I think we've really kind of exhausted a little bit on the music and how debaucherous that whole industry is, because it is really bad, and the entertainment industry is just equally as terrible. I mean, there's more classless things being presented.
Well, look at
by
like
our
Ezra
culture.
Miller. Ezra Miller, I don't know if you're aware of the whole controversy around him in the Flash movie. The
Yeah.
fact that they released the movie is, I was like, even for today, that shocks me. He's like a cult leader, a pedophile, a groomer. He's a bunch of really, really bad things. But because they all that came out after they had already made the bloody movie, and they already have his face with the TV series, they're so invested, so they just kind of like swept it under the rug, and all of it disappeared from the mainstream media. And the movie came out, but it tanked anyways because it sucked. But now they also have the egg on their face of having released it with like a known sex predator starring. But it's just like the fact that they did that. It's just, and the fact it was in the news,
It's classless.
tolerated, just like, wow, the balls on them. Like, because they know they can get away with it.
So
And they did. The only reason the movie failed was because it sucked, not because of some mass protest that it had a friggin' pederast at the helm.
So the question then goes, how do you return class to a society that its main source of culture, which is, let's say we identify that as the media, which the media is going to be all inclusive of movies, TV, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all of that's media that's digested on your phone, right? So that's probably, in my estimation, the biggest driver of the classless society that we're living in. There needs to be some level of mechanism of change, and you
could
can't
start
govern
with your
it,
phone.
though.
You
Yeah.
can start with your phone. Like, I mean, I think one of the principal, if there's one connotation or one synonym, something that resonates to me almost 100%. Like, I don't think that. Yeah, here's how I would put it. I don't think you can have class without restraint.
What Sandy
I
said in the
don't-
beginning.
Yeah, and I don't. So, and I think if there's
Not unnecessarily offend.
like, restraint is definitely something that's missing from today, from society today. Everything's
Everything's
to
shock
the
value.
excess. Everything's to the
Yeah,
excess.
that's what they are.
Everything's super jumbo, big, ultra. Nothing. There's no small portions anymore. Everything is huge and the best. And
It's not.
yeah, it's a bit.
Go ahead, Fly. You started to say
Get the
something.
Fuality TV. I don't call it reality. Fuality TV. It's about shocking and being classless. That's what's selling. And
Yeah,
one
it's
thing
all
about the
scripted, and they
media,
don't script
social media, and all the media platforms, they don't give a damn about being classless.
No.
All they care
want
about is
money.
money.
Aaron
They
McGruder.
want money. That's all.
Aaron McGruder used to talk a lot back in the early 2000s. He was a very vocal critic of African American culture, and still is. He's, by the way, Aaron McGruder is the guy who made the comic strip The Boondocks, as well as the television show.
Yeah, I did a video on my podcast. I went in on that dude. I went fucking in on him, man.
He's one of the best criticisms that I think he makes is on BET, Black Entertainment Television, and he was relentless about how much he views like BET as being harmful to the black community. I mean, and it showed up everywhere in his work. And I've never, I'm not a black guy. I've never sat down and consumed BET. But I mean, just listening to Aaron McGruder talk about it, I don't know. Everything he said made sense to me on that one because I saw it in other places as well in the white community. So I'm like, yeah. And most things that show up in the white community usually show up in the black community first and worse.
So there's a relationship to class and culture, and each society has a culture, right? So if you think about, and I'm going to use the Japanese culture because they're a really good example of where a certain preview of that culture.
They're a good one to bring up. They're
Hold
super
on.
classy. Yeah.
Except the fact that they're not sleeping with their women, that men have no interest in them. They're massively into a lot of really off stuff.
Yeah.
They have class on one side and tradition, and then a really, really messed up part of their society too. So
yeah, but I don't see that as being unclassy. Like what people choose to view in their pornographic habits or what they do behind closed doors. I don't think I think you can be a classy person and be a freak in the sheets.
Hannibal Lecter.
Well, no, Hannibal. No. I mean, like
same reference
in terms of sex, not in.
Terms,
it's
Hannibal
all
Lecter.
Legal.
Yeah, but what Hannibal Lecter was doing was still behind closed doors. It's the same answer, right?
Yeah, but it was
so
murderous.
it just tends.
There's a clear difference.
Yeah, it just tends to happen that some of. Yeah,
immoral
really?
behavior. Immoral behavior has levels.
There is a clear difference between murder and looking at like hentai porn while masturbating. Yes, I'm gonna draw a line, and I feel confident in it.
Yeah, there's definitely levels. I'm not saying there isn't. What I am saying is that there's a reference. I don't think the Japanese were as classy as Hannibal Lecter. Okay.
Ridiculous.
But I don't. I also don't think
you're not the supreme. You're not the supreme.
No, you're trying
decider.
to backdoor in
no,
like that.
I'm not.
No, it's.
I'm trying to reference it in the
the
sense that there are two sides. Yeah, I'm referencing that there are two sides.
On the word, but it's no.
What do you mean by that?
So again, so I'll make my point again. Classy people, like the what you're saying, or what we're both saying is that the Japanese are not classy because their pornographic tastes and what they do in the bedroom precludes them from being classy.
Incorrect.
I fundamentally okay, good.
Yeah. Yeah. We're agreeing the same thing. I'm referencing that Hannibal Lecter was also classy while doing things behind closed doors. It doesn't matter if it's on like a scale of good or bad, doesn't matter. The same thing can be said about Japanese. They're very classy, but what they do behind closed doors doesn't matter.
The only reason that we forgive Hannibal Lecter his crimes are because he is like the epitome of, like, his character is the epitome of class. That's the point of, that's what makes the character so awesome, is that you have this juxtaposition where on one hand he is like this avatar of classy perfection. The guy is incapable of not being classy, and he's at like the highest levels of class that could only really happen in fiction, right? And then on the other hand, he's also in the depths of depravity and hell on the other side, and that's what makes that tension so awesome. But he's a fictional character. We already said earlier, right,
yes,
that if we were actually present to the reality of that bad side of him, we wouldn't find him classy. So that I think we need to keep in frame of mind, because the Japanese, like, I don't consider people's, as long as the porn habits are legal, I don't think like it used to be, for example, classy people, I think, it wouldn't be like, it would never come up as a topic of conversation amongst classy people. What sort of porn do you watch, and what kind of freaky shit do you do in bed? Those aren't topics that classy people just generally engage in conversation, I think. So to me, the fact that the Japanese are having a problem where they're having like relationship issues where their men aren't having like sex with their women, but to me that has nothing to do with class. Like, that's not going to have anything to do with class. That's like a collision of a bunch of other things that you could spend a whole podcast talking about.
Yeah, there are other reasons for that besides for. Yeah.
I don't think it's a lack of class that's causing their problem with reproduction. It's going to be like technology, their culture, and other stuff.
So,
but
but
like
you
their
can't-
culture
you
itself is
can't-
renowned for its classiness. So is Singapore. Would be another example. Singapore, probably one of the classiest cities in the world. And it's also interesting that juxtaposition, like Hannibal Lecter, is there because if you violate any of their rules,
They'll kill
oh
you.
boy, you're going to regret it. You might die. Like there's a bunch of rules that if you do violate, you will die.
I'm going to defend my inclusion of that using the premise of what Sandy had written earlier, and I like how she put it, was respecting and treating a lady as a lady and a man as a man, and that the roles, not that they should be traditional, but they should begin to evolve from there in each relationship. If the men aren't marrying the women because of their current classless behavior, if you look at hentai, which is the sexualization of little girls, if you really are honest, okay? Because
No.
yes, they are, dude. Any hentai looks
No.
like they're dressed like little
No.
schoolgirls with giant boobs. I'm
We
sorry,
probably shouldn't go into this area, but
that's
no.
yes, it is.
That is no.
It's 100% that.
Sorry, no.
It
The
is.
depths of depravity that I've been to in the internet
I'm
compared
not-
to you,
right.
you're so out of your depth. Don't
And
even.
again,
No.
I don't have to explore
That's
something
all.
to
You
see
know what?
the
You can
surface
Google it
and not
like,
say
look at the
that it's not bad.
Wikipedia articles.
Right, and again,
Yeah, I don't think it's good, but it has nothing to do with kids. That's lolicon. That's a totally different thing.
regardless, it all stemmed out of Japan. That culture stemmed out of Japan.
No.
No, so hentai didn't come out of Japan.
Hentai came out of Japan, but like
Okay.
the sexualization of children didn't come out of Japan.
No, that's been on 100,000.
That's
years.
everywhere.
That's
Yeah.
That's I
Everywhere,
wouldn't
yes.
charge any group of people with that. right?
United States is
That's
have their
human.
hands bloody too.
Yeah, we're real. Everybody's guilty on that shit. But what I'm
I was
driving
about to say,
at,
lots of North Americans
Oh, yeah.
consume hentai, so.
but again, I have to ask and pull in an individual, and I'm going to use something that I've referenced in a different context. Is that I've always been my mom as a kid. What's an adult, right? Because I was like, I'm almost 18, I'm an adult, and she's like, well, that the age has nothing to do with being an adult, and she wasn't wrong. And
Right.
my definition of an adult is an individual who does what's correct when the authority figure isn't present, right? So class would also have a similar definition in which it's carrying yourself and behaving in a manner even when no one's around to observe you being classy.
Okay, so this hypothetical is going to sound a bit. It's not designed to be inflammatory. It actually gets to the heart of the disagreement. I think. What if? So of course, a complete hypothetical. But what if we uncover in the future some, I don't know, some like hidden diaries, notebooks, whatever, from Mrs. Reagan and Ronald himself. And there's pictures and all that. And it turns out that one of their preferred bedroom activities was Mr. Reagan liked Mrs. Reagan to peg him. If that information came out, would you no longer consider Ronald Reagan to be a classy individual?
Yes, I wouldn't, because you and I earlier in this conversation said that there could be a single act or behavior that could
Oh no, of
preclude
course,
you
yeah.
from
Yeah.
being in
Yeah.
the.
It's fine for you to disqualify him for one thing. So it's just about do you?
So, do I personally?
Do you and why? Yeah, I totally accept that one thing can disqualify. Totally fine. So the question is, would that disqualify him
I'm
from
gonna
being
consider
a
that.
classy
No,
person?
no,
I
it
want to
would-
consider that for a
I
minute.
don't think it would at all.
And I will
wouldn't
let
give a
Fly
shit.
and Phil answer before I answer.
No, it would not. It would not. What he do sexually? I mean, with a woman? No, it would not. Now, if he was, I don't know, man. That's a fine line.
Right, where's the
I
line
know
get
it's
drawn?
tough, right? That's why
I mean,
kind of made it
You know,
that
you
way.
find that he was, maybe same sex, doing it with a guy. I don't know, man. It's just, again,
Probably
it's
not
your
a homosexual thing. It's just called
it's your,
milking the
it's your
prostate.
perception. It's your perception of what classy is. It's your perception. It's your perception of what that means to you.
So, Phil, answer.
Is he still classy?
Yeah.
What the man does in his private life is not my concern.
So
True that.
Now,
you wouldn't hold
if-
that to.
As long as it's not illegal, right?
No,
I mean,
if he's doing something that
And
would damage
immoral.
somebody else, right, and it's immoral, then yes.
So
And I
If
think
he
that lines like an immoral.
to a child, his ass got no. He would not be classy.
yeah, if we found out secretly he was a pedophile,
I
or
mean, like we
looked
have.
at
Okay.
child porn, I would say yes,
Okay.
he's no longer
So
classy then,
how does
'cause it's
President
illegal.
how does President Biden not get charged for a lack of class with the fact that he sniffs kids and all kinds of shit?
He's sleepy, creepy Biden.
That is a
He's
creepy motherfucker.
He's one
So-
of the most classless presidents we ever had, man.
The hair
But-
sniffing is not
but-
classy. It's pretty
Right.
creepy.
So here's the question: how did half of our fucking country vote for this asshole, knowing we knew beforehand how classless he
Well,
was?
You're kind of setting up the answer.
Oh,
Who
I
was
know.
The other guy.
And both of them were bad.
Ooh, I'm about
Both,
to say,
right?
you
Yep.
just
So,
answer your
there's-
request. If the other guy had been a classy alternative, like some retired 4-star general with a perfect wife and family and no scandals, who just happens to be conservative, it's never like has done some local politics, but is more of like just a strict military guy. Like you get that guy, and as opposed to Biden, that guy wins in the biggest landslide ever, simply because he's competent and has clearly handled like immense responsibility before and handled it well. I mean, but so like why the conservatives of all people cannot find a way to get like an Eisenhower version 2.0. Most of the military tilts conservative. Most of the retired generals or active ones are conservative and Republican. So you telling me you can't find one of these guys that just like most of these guys are pretty like orderly guys. I would think they don't have a lot of scandals in their personal lives. Like they all got families and kids.
Especially to be a general officer.
Well, and they've all handled like if they're at the level of like a multi-star general, they've all handled immense responsibilities that are not the equivalent of the presidency, but I think certainly the equivalent of anyone like in Congress or a senator. So
that poses an interesting question.
Why doesn't that happen?
So I pose an interesting question.
Maybe they don't want that job, man. Maybe they don't want that position.
Hold
they
on.
know what
Part of the
entails.
problem, yeah.
So
yeah,
Because
look
people
at
don't
General
wanna get into
Colonel Powell.
politics.
Yes,
So-
yes. They know the evil behind this shit.
So is that now? Do we judge them for that? Is that a cop out? Like, like they know that if they've done the analysis and they know that their society needs them, but they don't want to do it because it's like in the twilight of their life and it just seems too hard. Like I can understand not doing it, but at the same time, I mean, if you're called.
Well, here's an interesting thing. Is class something that is inherent to certain, like if you look at the military officer, right? An officer in the military has a really high standard of behavior. You can be put in jail for behavior unbecoming an officer. Like that's a charge.
You can
in the
be
military.
executed in the military
Okay.
for behavior. I mean,
Unbecoming
just
an
flat
officer.
out court
If
martialed
you
and
cheat
killed.
on your wife in the army,
yeah, that's not good.
And you're an officer. That's constituted as behavior unbecoming. So there's obviously a standard that has been written down on what class should look like. And the military, I think, offers a very interesting concept. And I wish I could. One of my researchers of the three of us will pull up the UCMJ on officer unbecoming, or what
I know that adult
parameters
like the
of officer
the
unbecoming.
reason that the army is interested in policing adultery is not because they are like so interested in the morality of it. I think it's because they understand that like like a soldier with a happy family with where he knows where he's confident his wife isn't cheating on him and everything's good at home, that soldier is a better soldier than the soldier who is like fucking around on his wife and then causes chaos in his home life and she divorces him and takes the kids and now his mind is all focused on that rather than at the task at hand. Like at a fundamental level it makes sense why, like, the army has seen too many good soldiers broken by either their own bad behavior or the bad behavior of their wives. And so like, and that's good too, because like then it's like if the wife of the soldier cheats, the soldier is going to be real concerned about it, not just because she's cheating on him, but because she's also putting his military career in jeopardy. So it's, yeah, it makes sense why they would be focused on that, because it actually is good for, like, it's good for the military to have soldiers with happy, stable families where they're not cheating on their wives and their wives aren't cheating on them. And the nature of the job allows for a lot of opportunity to cheat, because soldiers are spending incredible amounts of time away from their wives and families, just in various places around the world, where they can just, you know, cheat with like zero potential for being caught, and then, you know, literally all the evidence of it is halfway around the globe where it'll never be seen. So yeah, I think it's very intelligent for the army to care about that and enforce it. But I wouldn't say that it's doing that because it's so interested in the morality of it. It aligns with morality, and that's good, but I think it also more importantly aligns with like making an effective fighting force, which is their biggest, what should, okay, it should, this is an American military that has had some issues with like telling people about pronoun usage, but that should be their number one focus, is being an effective fighting force. So I don't know, like it's I think it's, there are some disqualifying things um for class, but I don't think weird sexual behavior like in private would be one of them. So here, let's make it more challenging. And this is to myself as well. I just want to challenge my own instincts here. Um, so let's take the Ronald Reagan one again. And let's, instead of making it what he does in the privacy of his own bedroom, let's make it that he would put on private cabaret performances for his closest friends and some selected others, who all kept the secret until well after he was dead, where he would cross dress, like put on women's clothing.
So like Hoover,
Yeah, exactly, like Hoover. Yeah, where he would like do the Hoover thing. And not just in the privacy of his own home with his wife, but like without in public with other people, and the secret was just kept, but it was kind of like a known thing among certain circles. Would we still accept Ronald Reagan as being classy? And the reason I'm using that is because, to my own inner sense, my inner sense told me very strongly he's still classy if he's getting pegged by his wife in the privacy of his own bedroom. But when I change it to this, I make it public, and I make it some kind of kink or fetish play, I'm starting to waver, and I'm starting to be like, I don't know if he's classy anymore. He's
Well, it's
sure
like,
not, like he's sure not as classy as he was before I found that out. No question about that.
yeah, would he be as classy, or would he continue to be classy if he was known to associate with whores?
Yeah, another go. Oh yeah, so you could take like JFK. Like JFK is considered a pretty classy president, and a lot of individuals delivered incredibly stirring speeches, looked great in a suit, but well known for cheating on his wife, and it was known in the day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like, would I consider JFK classy? Actually, I wouldn't. In the totality, if I had to like, if I had to put it on a binary, like he obviously had a bunch of classy attributes and he could comport himself in classy situations. But if I just had to pick, like you know, 51% or 49%, call it. No, I wouldn't consider him classy at all. No. Well, not at all, but I wouldn't consider him classy. I wouldn't consider him enough to tilt over into the 51% to be classy. And for much the same reason as Trump. Trump can comport himself in a classy way amongst classy people, and without a hitch, no problem. He's been doing it for most of his life. But he also paid porn stars for sex while he was married. So no, no. And he said and he said like that he's a slobbering kissy mess with women, and he just grabs them by the pussy. No, no, that's enough to put him over into the no. I don't consider him classy either. Obama overall classy, yes, yeah. I'm not aware of anything that. Okay, there have been some recent developments. But even then, I'm like, yeah, no, that still falls under private bedroom stuff. So the letters. But yeah, Obama I would put as classy, sure. But again, classy doesn't like classy to anyone like whose hackles are rising because they don't like Obama. Just remember that classy doesn't mean good. Classy just means classy. So here's a question: can you be classy and evil? My gut says yes, and not in the Hannibal Lecter fictional way, but I think that yes. I think
Yeah.
you can like be a fine appreciator of the art. You could be like, oh, what's his name? Is it Conrad Black? The guy who's running that like $60 billion Ponzi scheme. Like he would have, he was like the epitome of class. And then he did one, and he did one really big bad thing, and it was this big Ponzi scheme where he ripped off other rich people. I think it was either Conrad Black or hold on, I'm gonna look it up because it's gonna bother me. But chime in on that. My gut says
Bernie
that you can
Madoff?
be evil and still be classy. I don't
Are you
think you
talking
can be
about
great
Madoff?
evil.
Bernie Madoff?
Bernie Madoff, thank you. Yes, you got it. Bernie Madoff.
I mean, the name itself. Come on now.
Oh, I mean, that guy was an absolute pillar in
Yeah, true.
on Wall
True.
Street. I mean, he was
True.
the toast of the town. Um, and all of those things were true. The only thing that was bad was that thing in the background that he was doing that was complete BS where he ripped people off. And it's like, yeah, that's really immoral, bad behavior. But
I mean,
don't know,
we had a lot of people in his story that were classy and evil at the same time. I mean, let's look at slavery. I'm sure there was some classy men and women who were very classy in the arts and their societies, but they were evil as fuck in what they were doing to human beings. So yes.
Yeah. You could argue even people now, like I just watched a documentary, I've watched several now about cobalt mining. And cobalt mining is modern day slavery. It's in the Congo, and it is it's like
40,000 kids.
It's ridiculous. And they're breathing it in. They're all going to die. They're getting literally paid nickels a day. And they're all in indentured slavery. Like, it's ridiculous. So anyone, like, you couldn't live as a perfectly classy person without committing any crimes. But I think that you can still benefit from, like, so you think of, like, somebody growing, like, think of a woman growing, like a white lady growing up rich on some plantation. She doesn't have the vote. She doesn't have any ability to change slavery, even if she doesn't like it. She'd be classy her entire life. But the question of, like, was she a good person? Probably not. I mean, she benefited from a system that she knew was wrong. She couldn't change it, but she could have influenced the change. I mean, lots of suffragettes were also abolitionists, and there was a lot of common ground there. So I think that it gets sophisticated. It gets problematic. Well, I think you could be. I don't think classy is enough to indicate that you're good.
I would
I don't think they're synonymous.
That is an interesting point to call it. We're at a little over an hour at this point.
Yeah.
So, class is an interesting.
We need more of it, though. Regardless, it is it's better to have class. It's like if you have the choice between being crass and being classy, you want to be classy. Yeah, because I think that the necessary.
Let's start a movement. Be classy, not crassy.
Well, yeah, and the necessary attributes that you need to embody in order to be classy are they all align with good behavior, restraint, poise, humility, character. I mean,
as my wife put it in the beginning,
sophistication.
Hold your tongue, refrain from swearing, politeness and manners. Right there.
Yeah, these are all things that are good.
Don't unnecessarily offend. And on that note, guys, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Have a great week, people.